Now, Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut, member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, I want to try as best you're able to. I understand your role and your access to sensitive information, but targeting and sharing intelligence are two distinct things. Obviously, the intelligence can aid another country with their targeting. What the Times talks about is intelligence sharing. I read it a few times. It's not about targeting the generals. It's about sharing the intelligence. So what are you able to share with us about how U.S. intelligence is aiding Ukrainians on the battlefield?
Yeah, Nicole, as you point out, it's always a tough question to answer, but maybe I can cast a little bit of light by giving you a sense for the parameters here. You heard John Kirby. That is true. It is not the United States' intent or goal to knock off Russian leadership. And by the way, this is hard to do, right? The intelligence that we gather, and we're very, very good at gathering intelligence. You know, the American people get something for the roughly $80 billion a year that we spend on intelligence gathering. It's very hard to convey that to other Americans, by the way, much less to foreign countries, because when you convey intelligence, of course, there's some chance that people can understand the way you did it or the capabilities. But the important point here, Nicole, is that we are going to use all of our assets, short of going after regime change or, you know, as John Kirby said, deliberate and specific targeting of generals, to stop the Russians from their rape of Ukraine. And it's not just the United States. You know, the United Kingdom and France and Poland and any number of other countries have incredible intelligence capability. And those assets are going to be made available to the Ukrainians to defend their country right up until the moment that Russia decides that this catastrophe needs to stop. That's when we'll all stop. But until then, the Russians should expect that the free and decent world is going to provide the assets that they need to deliver the kind of devastating losses that the Russians have suffered in Ukraine to date.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you answered the question in a way that makes more sense to me. I mean, the Secretary of Defense was in Ukraine saying that the end goal is to weaken Russia militarily. We have made abundantly clear that we have chosen sides, and it's Ukraine. We have sent them plane after plane after plane after plane of the weapons that they have specifically asked for, and that we're sharing intelligence. I mean, the intelligence community in this country is one of the sung and unsung heroes of this effort. They predicted everything that Russia would do up to and including the start of the war. And I guess if you could just you know, the line you're drawing is that we have no role. It's frankly not a prerogative to help any country with their targeting. But of course, we're sharing intelligence. I mean, is that a fair summary sentence?
It is a fair summary sentence, and it is really valuable what we share. You know, I mean, to put this in perspective to you, I told you that, you know, the country spends roughly $80 billion a year on intelligence. The entire Russian military budget, and there's a lot of discussion about what it might really be, but it's in that neighborhood, you know, somewhere between, let's call it, you know, $60 billion and $120 billion. So that's their entire military budget. So particularly given what we've seen on the battlefield, we have no reason to believe that the Russians fully understand what kind of intelligence we can deliver. But really the key point here, and this is why I get a little bit concerned about statements about weakening Russia. Look, the United States of America wants a powerful, wealthy, prosperous Russia that behaves by the basic rules of decency, that abides by the rule of law. That is in all of our interests. But as long as Russia is led by a murderous oligarch or a murderous despot who is willing very literally to target innocent people in a country whose invasion was utterly unprovoked, he is going to, and his nation is going to be subject to some of the most intense you know, military and intelligence sharing that we can provide. But that ends tomorrow. If the Russian people or if Vladimir Putin decides that they're going to get off this insane catastrophic journey that they're on, that ends tomorrow if they decide that.
Congressman, last time we spoke, you were just out of a meeting with Speaker Pelosi. Since you and I last talked, she has traveled to Kyiv to meet with President Zelensky, with some of your colleagues. And the topic of our conversation was about whether or not this designation of Russia as state sponsors of terrorism is a conversation happening behind the scenes. And I wonder if you have any updates on where those conversations stand.
Yeah, and you may recall, I know that that's kind of the headline, right? And now, but what we again, we can't lose sight of what the objective is. The objective is to isolate Russia. You know, it is a crime to do business with a terrorist organization, right? But guess what? Germany and many European countries are doing business with the Russians. I wish that wasn't true, but you cannot take 40% of the energy consumption of the nation of Germany and turn that off overnight. So I'm much more interested in, let's not worry about what we call it, but let's make sure the Europeans in particular are on the path to stopping the flow of hard currency into Russia. And oh, by the way, much more challenging, but the Chinese as well. That's what's really important here.
Congressman, the Ukrainians privately and publicly have grave concerns that the West, not President Biden and not their strong support on both sides of the aisle in Congress, but that among the public in this country and throughout Europe will grow tired or weary, that it won't be our top story anymore. When I'm sure they bring those concerns to you, what is your response, or what is your sense of how these atrocities have sort of woken people up? I mean, I hear it sort of way beyond my life in television or politics. I see empty water bottles with kids putting coins in them at drop-off all around the city. And you see images of houses of worship all across this country where they're trying to help. But what is your sense of where, not just in this country, but where thoughts of Ukraine stand right now in the West?
Well, we're not going to forget this. We're not going to tire of this, Nicole, for a couple of simple reasons. Number one, I think most Americans understand the unparalleled level of brutality that the Russians have visited on the Ukrainians. And let's face it, both Iraq and Afghanistan, where we did not cut and run quickly, we were in both places for some 20 years, the situation was much more complicated. You had militias on this side and Iran on that side. This is a very clear-cut case, and I sort of hesitate to use the framing, but I think it's apt, of good versus evil, and Americans understand that. So we will be there. Look, I was just at a meeting with a group of Ukrainians that we managed to get to Ridgefield, Connecticut, and the town of Ridgefield, small town that most people have never heard of, has stood up and dedicated itself, regardless of party affiliation, to doing all that they can to help the Ukrainians. So we're there for the long haul.
Congressman, my friend and colleague Rick Stengel has a question for you.
Hi, Congressman. Thank you for those clear answers. I'm going to give a tiny little speech first, which is the difference.
Go ahead.
The reason there were 9 generals that were targeted is because our military is much more horizontal. The authoritarian state's military is vertical. They have to send in generals to the field because they don't have guys that can make decisions on their own, and they don't let them. So
they don't delegate, is that what you're saying?
They don't delegate. And they don't allow personal initiative. So my question for you, Congressman, is what do we know about the state of the Russian military, and what possibilities that Putin may resort to with a military that has been lessened in its effectiveness and power?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's probably underappreciated the extent to which a macho, despotic, strong man will regret the day that he demonstrated to the world that his military is really incredibly incapable, right? And yes, you put your finger on it. The Russian military doesn't have a good non-commissioned officer corps. The sergeants in our military who kind of keep it all together, they don't have a concept of commander's intent. In our military, everybody in the military understands what the intent is. And as a result, you don't need to put 1-star and 2-star generals into the trenches up front to actually make the decisions about how you unmoor a tank or something. So and it goes well beyond that as well. The Russians have shown that they're really incapable of doing combined arms operations. This is something that the West figured out many decades ago, where you coordinate your Air Force and with the infantrymen on the ground and that sort of thing. So, but my gosh, the headline here is for a guy who really cares about his macho sensibility, amongst the many other strategic catastrophes he's brought upon himself, was to demonstrate to the world that the Russian military is not nearly what we feared it was.
It's amazing. And you're right, underappreciated. Congressman Jim Himes, thank you very much for spending some time with us, and a shout out to Ridgefield. I certainly know where that is. That's a wonderful story. We'll try to get more information about that next time you're here.